and welcome to YSS Let's Talk. My name is Samantha Kemp Carlin. I am a mental health therapist at Iowa Homeless Youth Center and chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee here at YSS. Tonight, our topic is LGBTQ Pride Month, and I am beyond excited and honored to have as our guest Dr. George Belitsos, who's the founder and CEO Emeritus of YSS, and one of the 2020 LGBT Legacy Award winners, and to also have Damian Thompson, Director of Public Policy and Communications at Iowa Safe Schools. Thanks to both of you for being here tonight. Before we get started, I want to just provide a quick little vocab and history lesson for folks who are tuning in. We're going to be probably using the phrase LGBTQ a lot tonight. And so to give folks an idea of what we mean when we say that, LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and Q can stand for a number of things, including questioning, for folks who are questioning their sexuality or gender identity, or queer, which is an umbrella term that LGBT folks have reclaimed to identify themselves. And this term, people might have also heard LGBTQIA, LGBTQ2S, GEIA+. There's a lot of other ways that this comes across. And even if we're just saying LGBT or LGBTQ tonight, we want to make it known that we're being inclusive of everyone who is gender expansive, or whose sexual and gender identities don't fit very neatly into that LGBT, but we're talking about that greater community. And so I'm really excited because we're here in the middle of June, which is LGBT Pride Month. And for those not in the know, June as LGBTQ Pride Month is a commemoration of the Stonewall riots that occurred in New York City in 1969 following a raid on an LGBTQ-friendly establishment in Greenwich Village. And the year after, 1970, folks got together to commemorate and celebrate that galvanizing event that helped push us in a lot of great directions in terms of LGBTQ rights. And since then, we have celebrated in the United States and now all across the world LGBTQ Pride Month in the month of June. And so when I think about that event happening in 1969, just around that time, a young George was making his way to Ames to come to Iowa State University and would go on to found YSS in 1976. We just celebrated our 45th anniversary. So I'm wondering, George, can you share with us some of your experiences in those early days? What was it like to be the only openly LGBT executive director of a nonprofit in Iowa? What sort of challenges did you face?
A lot of challenges and a lot of risk taking. When I opened YSS, it was a youth shelter that we opened. It was Iowa's first runaway and homeless youth shelter, and I think giving it perspective would help how new this idea was of a shelter for youth. 40 years before YSS opened, or we opened, I opened Iowa's first runaway and homeless youth shelter. 40 years before Iowa opened its first runaway and homeless animal shelter. We had animal shelters in this state for 40 years before we had services for these young people who have run away from home or are homeless. At that time, LGBTQ was still considered a mental illness. Mm-hmm. Discrimination in housing and in jobs, even access to services were very scarce and very hard to come by. and there was widespread discrimination. Uh, I When I started at Iowa State University as a graduate student, I immediately got involved with a very new LGBT center at Iowa State. Had no staff; it was all volunteer run. But I realized that Iowa had a long way to go.
Mhm.
And when I talked about myself being out and proud, people were astonished that I would do that. So just as a new arrival. So when I started YSS, it was founded, I ensured that our policies and procedures included non-discrimination both in hiring as well as in service to LGBT, as well as fighting all kinds of intolerance. Uh, Come to find out, this was rare. Very few nonprofits and none of the youth service agencies had L, gay and lesbian youth protections, either in hiring staff or in service. So right away, YSS got known as an agency that was very inclusive and that was reaching out to gay and lesbian youth and their parents and providing services. I was out with my board of directors from the very start. We started with 9 board members, and over all those years, despite what was going on, I mean, 2 years after I started, YSS was founded, Harvey Milk was assassinated.
Right.
I mean, the level of hatred toward LGBT people was very, very high. And things have changed so much for the better. But we were groundbreakers. And what the result was, in all those years being out to my board, I only lost 1 board member who resigned because he just didn't support uh, our policy of being open and supportive of LGBTQ. Um, we One of the great things that happened is that as other child welfare agencies heard about YSS and uh, that we didn't discriminate, uh, one of the first psychologists we hired was the lead psychologist at in Des Moines, and working for an agency that did not have protection of staff, and she was not out. That was Martha Leatherman, Dr. Leatherman. Uh, Getting her to our agency was a huge coup. It put us on the map as far as professionals were concerned around the state who had doubts about us. People didn't know that she was attracted to our agency because of the protections that she would have. So I'm very proud of that. And then there were so many risks that we took in reaching out to LGBTQ youth that also put us on the map. For example, one of our gay and lesbian young people who was in a small town right here in Story County up in Gilbert um, came out at school and quickly became a client at YSS. And so we worked with him and his parents, and we had great staff and helping kids come out and helping to get the support of their parents rather than running away from home because their parents were, uh, just not supportive and in fact uh, uh, kicked them out.
Yeah.
So we're really good at that. So we're getting all of these kids who were LGBTQ from other agencies sent to us. But here was a kid from a small town right in Story County. He was very troubled because of discrimination at school and teasing, and no one was doing anything about it. Damian, this was before really safe schools got uh, anything done at the legislature to protect LGBTQ. So anyway, um, one night he was on the wrestling team, and the kids in the wrestling team afterwards beat him up.
Hmm.
He got in his car to go home, and they had loosened the lug bolts on his wheel,
Oh.
and the wheel came off while he was driving home. And of course, he was in an accident. He wasn't very uh, badly hurt, but he was so crushed by being beaten up and by what happened to his car. 2 days later, he attempted suicide.
Hmm.
And no one would come forward to identify the kids that beat him up or that put the lug bolt or took the lug bolts and loosened them. We put a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest or conviction of who did that. And that crime was solved. And he, the school board then decided to put LGBTQ in as a protected class.
Mm-hmm.
And we led the charge in going to the school board and trying to get that included. And we got it done. So I'm really proud of that. I'm just giving that as one story to let you know the kind of risks we took as a nonprofit. Oh, this is Hobbit. She loves being on Zoom calls.
Well, that's a great story and a great segue into Damian at Iowa Safe Schools. You talked, Dr. George, about wanting to provide a safe space, not just for LGBTQ youth, but protections for LGBTQ employees in the workplace. And that's really what the founding of Iowa Safe Schools was all about. So Damian, tell us a little bit about where Iowa Safe Schools started and where we find ourselves now in 2021. What does the landscape look like for LGBTQ kids in Iowa today?
Absolutely. And this is, I'm always happy to talk about this. We were founded in 2002 after the problem of bullying in the classroom really being a pervasive issue that school boards were failing to address across the state, specifically against LGBTQ youth who are targeted at much higher rates than other marginalized populations. And so after 5 years of work in 2007, we were successfully able to pass Iowa's first and only anti-bullying law, which identifies all cases of bullying, creates mechanisms for school districts to investigate and address issues of bullying, as well as prevention, which is the most critical piece. In addition, in 2007, we were able to work to have gender identity and sexual orientation added to Iowa's Civil Rights Act, providing critical protections for thousands of LGBTQ Iowans across the state of Iowa in housing, workplace protections, and many other areas. And this is still a critical piece of legislation, again, to many of these folks across the state. Ever since then, we've been working on a variety of other legislative issues. We want to revisit the anti-bullying law, strengthen it. There are areas, especially cyberbullying in 2007, did not look the same as it does in 2021.
For sure.
A lot we can do to beef that up in different ways and give school boards the correct support to address that problem. Conversion therapy is a pervasive issue across the state that, as a victim service agency, we hear from too many LGBTQ students and adults that are victimized by conversion therapists. So we're working at the legislature to ban that. Inclusive curricula is critically important for creating safe and supportive classrooms for marginalized populations, not just LGBTQ youth. And protecting intersex rights. For those watching that don't know, sometimes when LGBTQ has an I at the end, it indicates the intersex population, which is a group of folks who are born with essentially a combination of what we would consider traditionally male and female genitalia. And a lot of times what's happening is these individuals are being given really what we would kind of classify as a sex reassignment surgery at a very young age when they can't consent. And they're growing up and realizing that they've been incorrectly assigned or some folks actually just like being intersex and they're not happy with the results. So we've introduced a bill a few sessions in a row here to address the problem and give the power of informed consent to these youth to kind of choose their own destiny. So that's just a few things we're working on here. Along with that, I mean, our bread and butter is our GSA network, Gay Straight Alliance, or Gender Sexuality Alliance, as some folks refer to it. We have hundreds of them across the state in middle school, elementary, high school, and even college level GSAs that we have staff that work full time to go around to all of these GSAs at least once, if not more, a semester to make sure that they have the resources they need to be successful and feel supported. And if issues of bullying come up, or other issues of harassment or problems in school environments, we are all certified victim service providers through the Attorney General's office. And so we intervene as necessary to support victims in different ways. One final thing I wanted to touch on is our fantastic education department. We're one of 3 or 4 license renewal providers for educators across the state of Iowa. And so we have over 50 classes and an online academy for those educators, administrators, school support staff to access on everything from LGBTQ topics to addressing homelessness amongst the student population and other mental health problems as they arise. Really, our mission is, again, to create safe and supportive school environments, whether it's working on the educator and the administration end or working directly with those students. And if it comes to it, we've done many trainings in person as well, especially when those issues arise. We will work to mediate and address them and then do some follow-up after the fact to provide that educational foundation so it doesn't ever happen again.
That's excellent. It was really great for me to hear, Damian, you talk about all the great stuff that Iowa Safe Schools has been doing since 2002, especially right after the story that George told about the active role that YSS took in standing up for one of their participants in a similar situation. And to me, it just speaks to how important it is to have agencies that specialize in different areas, right? So that YSS can focus on doing what we do best, which is to continue to support our youth in the shelter setting or in a residential service setting or at home with their families or through our mentoring programs. And then we have the support of other organizations like Iowa State Schools, who we can direct our participants to for support and who we know are putting boots on the ground to help make Iowa a safer place for LGBTQ students and teachers. So as an LGBTQ affirmative therapist working in a homeless shelter, I know that the numbers regarding LGBTQ youth and homelessness are still pretty significant. Anywhere from 20 to 40% of homeless youth identify as being LGBTQ. And so when we look at this span of years, you know, from 1969, the Stonewall riots, 1970, the first Pride, to 2021, 50 years later, why is Pride still important? And Dr. George, talk to us about what does Pride mean to you and what's an important part of celebrating Pride for you?
It means a lot to me. To celebrate who we are and to get the support from every corner of the community for who we are. And I'd just like to follow up too on and just say how much I think of Safe Schools and what you have accomplished. I was on the founding board. I was there to hire your first and only CEO, and I just think the things that you have accomplished are just incredible. I'd just like to say that the first GSA, and that is the backbone of your program, started in Ames, and it was started by one of YSS's clients who worked with Martha Leatherman, was her therapist, and worked with her mother. And she now herself is like like you, Samantha, she's a therapist. But she got Ames High. They had to go through the school board to get permission to be considered a club and all that. And they got it done, and I'm very proud that it was a YSS client.
That's really great. That's a great story. When I think back to 2002, when we talk about when Iowa Safe School started, I was a junior in high school, and I could probably name you 5 kids that were open and out about their sexuality at that time. And having a GSA in my school in rural Wisconsin in 2002 was absolutely unheard of. And so it's great to hear that story, George, to hear how, again, YSS is connected to the history of liberation for LGBTQ youth and adults in the state of Iowa. Damian, give us your take. What is important to you about Pride, and what's a important part about celebrating Pride for you?
Yeah, I really like to define Pride not only as the month of June, which is when we get all to come together and have so much fun and be out and proud, but really as a year-long fight. I mean, just today we saw that the Supreme Court denied LGBT couples the right to adopt from religious agencies, empowering religious entities to discriminate against protected classes. I mean, whether it's at the federal, state, or local government areas or from members of the community, we unfortunately face discrimination and hate every single day, especially in our schools. And Dr. George talked a little bit about how far we've come, and that is so, so true. I am thankful for folks like Dr. George and other members of the community, the Harvey Milks of the world, et cetera, that have fought the fight just to give us the most basic foundation of equal rights in the country. And we are really lucky in the state of Iowa, especially transgender folks, to be protected classes in the Civil Rights Act. That was groundbreaking in 2007, and in many ways it's still groundbreaking today. There's a lot of states that haven't extended that same privilege, whereas the LGBT Americans have that protection. So, I mean, whether it's at the Supreme Court again or the 15 anti-LGBTQ bills we saw come out of the Iowa legislature this year, our rights are on the line. Just as easily as they have been given, they can be taken away. And so we need to be vigilant. We need to be out, proud. I would like to say we're here, we're queer. We'd like to say hello, a friendly face. We'd love to show folks watching and those around Iowa and the nation that we are members of your community. We're your CEOs, your business leaders, your educators, your nurses, doctors. I mean, we're everywhere. And it doesn't mean that we just go away or that our issues evaporate when July 1 hits. So that is really the message I'd like to send for your viewers tonight.
Yeah, I think that's a great message. And you both have mentioned Harvey Milk a couple times. So I'm going to in another life, I may have been a teacher. And so I love giving these little history lessons. And for those of you who are not well versed in LGBTQ history, Harvey Milk was the first openly gay male politician in the United States. And he was a member of a city council, I believe. Was it in San Francisco?
Yep, the Board of Supervisors.
The Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Dr. George. And he famously said, come out, right? Harvey Milk's message famously was the way that we're going to achieve LGBT liberation in this country is by being our authentic selves and showing other people that we are just like them. We are human beings. And so he's a great figure who sadly, as Dr. George mentioned, was assassinated in the early 70s, shortly after he took his seat and was elected. But he's a great example of a leader in our community and a historical figure, and a great example of like Damian said, the work is never done. Pride Month is our time to celebrate and to remember all of the people who came before us and did lots of really hard work in times when they didn't have rights afforded to them, in times where they were at risk of losing their job or their livelihood or access to their families if they were out and proud. And so it's great to kind of hear both of you talk about that message. So you kind of started us off, Damian, talking about some of the issues affecting the LGBTQ community still today. I know we just wrapped up the legislative session in Iowa, and there was a slate of potential bills that had come up regarding especially bathrooms in schools and students in sports and how that would have affected LGBTQ youth. But we all are professionals who in our everyday work life, like LGBTQ issues are in the forefront of our job and our vocation and what we do. But for folks who are everyday folks, who are teachers, who are nurses, who are bus drivers, who are stay-at-home moms, what can they do in their own communities, in their schools, in their workplaces, in their places of worship? What can they do to raise awareness and support about issues impacting the LGBTQ community?
Well, number one, I would ask that anytime you hear within earshot of hearing someone tell a joke or make fun of a gay person or someone who they think isn't effeminate or doesn't fit what they consider normal, speak up and tell that person that is not something that that's very harmful what they're doing, and please stop. That's something we can all do because it still goes on. And sometimes it's not even behind the scenes. Sometimes it's right out in the open. You know, also transgender individuals have really taken a beating. There are over 100 bills nationwide have been introduced that are anti-transgender, that are going to do harm. Call on our legislators to speak up. Tell them, hey, I'm not gay or lesbian or transgender, have had no problem, but this bill is wrong. This bill is wrong. We don't support it. So let your public leaders and representatives know where you stand. You know, send the messages. We have a national bill that will protect all the states and all LGBT people. Half the states don't even have protections for housing or hiring. We had that at YSS back in 1976, and now we have it in Iowa. We were one of the few states, and there are a lot of states that don't have that, and we need to get people to speak up and say we want this passed in Congress. It's being held up by the Senate. It's passed the House. Did I have that right, Damian?
Yes, it has passed the House, and it's sat in the Senate. I mean, it passed the House twice, and now it's sitting in the Senate, and the future is grim, to say the least, unfortunately. But we need Republicans, so we have 2 Republican senators to get to 60. So call Senator Grassley, call Senator, write letters, go to their forums, their events. They are available. You just need to do the action.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add, I mean, the ultimate foundation for causing change is getting active, and it's as simple as a phone call, an email, a letter, etc. But we need folks to be running for office, whether it's school board, who are so critical. Our school boards frame inclusive schools and protect or don't protect LGBTQ students in the state of Iowa. Run for state house, city council. I'm currently working with a variety of city councils and county supervisors across the state to ban conversion therapy, which can be done at the municipal level. Even Congress, if you feel that adventurous. I mean, we need more active and engaged allies, whether they're Republican, whether they're Democrat, whether they're Libertarian or Green or Independent. We need folks to be running for office. And for individuals that work in the corporate world or have students going to local schools, ask those school boards, ask those corporate boards, why do we not have a diversity and inclusion officer? Why do we not have an equity committee? Why aren't we actively taking efforts to make sure that these marginalized populations are protected? And in many workplaces, it's just as simple as asking, and you can start a committee and really run with it. But just making sure in your workplace, in schools, and in public life, you are being an ally, which is more than just hanging a rainbow flag, which is a fabulous way to show your support, but stepping up and being vocal, like Dr. George said, is so critical.
Yeah. And I think a really important thing that you guys both said is be active and be involved. You know, hanging a flag to show your support is great, but we need action to make change happen. Flags don't vote people into office, and flags don't sign their names at the bottom of bills, right? Like, being active is really the way that we do make that change. And I think, like you said, Dr. George, speaking up when other people say things is really important. I can't tell you how many times, as a therapist who works primarily with adolescents, that I've heard young people use slurs, LGBT slurs, and not even really know what they mean. They've heard other people use them, and so they use them, and then when they find out what they're actually saying, they're horrified, right? But it becomes such a part of maybe the culture that they're raised in that they don't think twice about using words like that. And so speaking up and educating others really, really matters. So in our last couple minutes, I know that a lot of Pride activities and events have been postponed or shifted to virtual kind of activities because we're still kind of wrapping up with COVID. But I'm wondering if either of you have any Pride events either this month, or I know Ames is doing their Pride event later in the fall this year. Are there any events or activities coming up that you guys are looking forward to that people might want to get involved in?
Yeah, here at Iowa Safe Schools, we're so excited after a year of being on pause to be bringing back on June 26th, which is a Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m., our annual Pride Tailgate, which is right in our parking lot in the East Village. We're going to have some great food, some games, music for all LGBTQ youth and allies to come and enjoy. We're going to be having a variety of local politicals and state legislators that are proud allies also showing up to show their support. So I would encourage everyone here to go to our website, iowasafeschools.org, or go to that wonderful Facebook event, just at Iowa Safe Schools on Facebook. You can find the link to register. It is a free event. We would love to see you all there. It's going to be an awesome, awesome time.
And in fact, the gay or the Pride event will take place in September here in Ames, but I'm having a party tomorrow night for Pride, and we're going to be recognizing a couple of our friends who have done outstanding things. We have one of our, a couple actually, we're going to be recognizing. He became the, David Martin became the first out LGBT person to ever get elected to any office in Story County. And his brochure, he had his husband and himself, just like you see all the straight couples with their family surrounding them. And he won, and he was the first. And we're honoring him and his husband tomorrow. Also, Randy Mayer was selected for one of the Legacy Leader, LGBT Legacy Leadership Awards. He works at the Department of Public Health, and he had several bureaus, including the HIV Bureau, and he's a great leader. So he'll be here tomorrow night. We have a bunch of other people we're going to be recognizing. So we're having a party at our farm. My husband of 37 years and myself are hosting it, and we're going to have food. I have a bunch. Don't put down LGBT flags. They say a lot. have a place right along Lincoln Way, and we have a whole bunch of big rainbow flags out. Don't forget, my church last year had an LGBT banner up in front of the church, and that's United Church of Christ in Ames, the oldest church in Ames. And a individual took that in the middle of the night, took that flag down, took that sign down, took it to a bar, got everyone from the bar to come out. He threw gasoline on it and burned our flag. He burned and he was charged with a hate crime. It's the first person in Story County history to ever be charged with a hate crime, and he was convicted. We need to put our rainbow flags out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a really good point. I want to put a little plug out there for folks who are going to be in the Des Moines area this weekend. I mentioned a couple weeks ago, Juneteenth is coming up, which is annual celebration for the African American Black community, remembering and commemorating the end of slavery. And a really great event is going to be happening in Western Gateway Park this weekend as part of the Juneteenth Neighbors Day, and that's the Manifestival. And so folks who are interested in checking out art, performers, and entrepreneurs of color, part of the Des Moines Capital City Pride 30 Days of Pride is featuring taking a look at those LGBTQ people of color and the art and beauty that they bring to our community. So that's a great opportunity for folks in Des Moines. If they want to do something to support their local community, check out some of those artists and entrepreneurs this weekend. So to wrap things up, I just want to say thank you, Damian, for being here. Really excited to have you and to talk about the connections between the work that YSS and Iowa State Schools are doing. Look forward to making more connections with you guys in the future. We did have a comment that I wanted to share, which is from Michael Tupper on Facebook, and he said, George Belitsos is probably the most courageous person I have known. And I met George for the first time tonight, but I've heard so much about him being at YSS for the past 5 years. And I told George before we started that I am so proud to be carrying on the mantle of the DEI work that he laid the foundation for at YSS, and so proud to be part of an organization that has such a rich history in LGBTQ liberation in the state of Iowa, and in providing safe spaces for all youth, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity, the color of their skin, their national background, what have you. Wonderful to be celebrating 45 years of YSS. I'm very appreciative of you, Dr. George, and all the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Next week, we will have Sadie Boer and Peg Ragnar on YSS Let's Talk to talk about our diaper drive. And so we'll be really excited to have both of them come on and talk about what a great opportunity folks will have to give back to the community and the folks that YSS serves through that event. So once again, thank you both, Dr. George and Damian, for being here. And to everyone watching, happy Pride Month.